Hi everyone, this is Sam from Docker, and this is a continuation of a previous video where we talked about continuous integration with Jenkins and Docker Enterprise Edition for DevOps. And in this video, what I want to do is I want to continue this and actually do a continuous deployment. So, and this is based on doing promotions for repositories in Docker Trusted Registry, and I'll explain this in a minute. So, if you haven't seen the previous video, I really encourage you and recommend that you go and take a look at that. I'll provide a link at the top of this video for you to go and watch it, and then when you're done, come back and watch this video. So, in this video, what we're going to do, I'm going to still develop my app on my MacBook, do a commit and a git push, goes to GitHub, and then I have the Jenkins server running as a container in a Linux node outside the UCP cluster. Now, in the previous video, we had it in the same cluster. Best practices for production environments to have your server build, your Jenkins build outside your deployment production cluster. So that's what we're doing here. We pull the client bundle. We explained how we do that and what the client bundle is in the previous video. And then we build the image based on the source code that we pull from GitHub. And we build the image and we push it to Docker Trusted Registry. Now what's new is that the Docker Trusted Registry now looks at, it scans the image against CVE databases to find any vulnerabilities. And if it finds no critical vulnerabilities, it's going to promote this image to a production repository. And then I have Jenkins deploy the production image into the UCP cluster after it waits 5 seconds for all this to happen. So with that, you're going to end up with a service running in UCP with the new build that's already been vetted through our security scanning mechanism. So let's see how this all works. And by the way, at the end of this demo, what I'll do is I'll actually stop one of the nodes where the actual image is running, the actual container is running, to view how Docker Swarm is going to move or reschedule the service onto a new node. All right. So let's go over to my application folder here where I'm developing. And the application is called Jenkins cool.py. So let's look at it. It's a very simple Python script, two-liner. All it's doing, it's writing Jenkins is cool over and over again. So what I'll do is I'm going to add a line here, deploy in production. Okay, I'm going to save that. I'm going to do a git commit and then a git push. Okay, cool. So now it's pushed. So let's go over to our Jenkins server. Now Jenkins is polling every, I think, 2 or 3 minutes to see if there's something new for it to do something. And while that happens, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my UCP console and show you what we've got. So we still have our UCP node and the manager node. We've also got our DTR node, and then we have 2 Linux, actually 3 Linux worker nodes. Don't worry about this one. I broke something while testing earlier, so don't worry about this one. And then you got 2 Windows nodes as well. So what's going to happen, we're going to find the service that gets deployed there automatically. So let's go back and take a look and see if this has completed. And it has not, so we'll give it a minute or 2. And while we're waiting, actually, why don't we go in and take a look at the script that we have here. So let's see. This is the build script that I mentioned earlier in the previous video, so not much has changed, if anything. So once again, we are defining some environment variables. One thing to note here is now I'm defining the actual UCP node, and it's important to make sure you have your firewall allowing 12376 port 12376 to access this node, because now I'm running it from outside the cluster. I'm building the image, and as you can see, the image is actually getting built into this repository called Jenkins demo with the Git ID that we grabbed earlier here. And then we're logging into Docker Trusted Registry, and then we're pushing the image, as you can see, into the Jenkins demo repository. So that's all good. Now we go back and look at the deploy script. Look at the configuration piece. Now this deploy runs right after the build phase, and what we do here, I'm sleeping this shell script for 5 seconds just to give DTR some time to promote my image and run the scanner and so on. So what we're doing here, we're grabbing the Git ID once again, and then defining the environment variables as we mentioned earlier in the previous shell script. And then here I'm actually creating the service. So I'm deploying a service, giving it a name based on the same Git ID that we mentioned. And notice here what I'm doing. I'm actually deploying this based on the production repository once it's already been promoted. Okay. All right, so it seems to be good now. We see that last success is a minute 47, minute 44. So we have the build ready to go. So let's go back to our Swarm service. And you can see here's the latest build 2 minutes ago. And the build ID is D8AF0AB. Which we can actually double check here. Let's go over here, look at the console output, and sure enough, it is D8AF0AB. So we have our service running. We can inspect the container itself, and you can see it's up 59 seconds ago, and it's running on node Linux 2. So node Linux 2, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my console, and I'm going to shut this guy down. So what you'd expect is that this will be moved over to a separate or a different worker node since this is going down. And there you go. So host is down. And what Swarm is going to do is going to recreate the service and the container onto a separate node. You can also see this if we go to the into the nodes here. As you expect, Linux 2 is now down. And let's go back to services. And here's my service. It's back up. Now let's see where the container got scheduled now, and it's scheduled on Linux 1 now. So you can see that the resiliency of Docker Swarm as well in rescheduling the container when one of the nodes goes down. Now I want to briefly show you what's going on in Docker Trusted Registry. So I mentioned that the Jenkins demo, that's the repository where we do our initial builds. And you can see the latest build is the D8AF0AB that we mentioned earlier. But there is a promotions policy that we talked about. And if we view this policy really briefly, what it tells you is that when it sees critical vulnerabilities equals to 0, it's going to promote this image to a repository called prod Jenkins demo using the exact same tag, the Git ID that we talked about earlier. So we can definitely go there and take a look at that new image or the repository, the prod repository, and look at the images there. And you can see that the image has been promoted because there are no critical vulnerabilities. We only see major vulnerabilities in this case. And you can take a look and check and see what those vulnerabilities are. The 4 major vulnerabilities have to do with Kerberos. So At this point, the security team will take a look and figure out whether this is something that the developers need to look at, whether we need to change the code, change the libraries, or if this does not apply, then we continue to move forward. So hopefully this video has been helpful to give you the entire workflow for CICD, continuous integration, continuous deployment with Jenkins and Docker Enterprise Edition, as we took this a step further than our previous video and showed you the entire supply chain cycle all the way to automatically deploying the image, and even when a node goes down, you have your application up and running as it gets rescheduled to a live and active node. Thanks for watching.